Thank you, Chairman Sullivan. I am looking forward to serving with you on this very important committee, subcommittee, and I'm also glad that you're holding this very important hearing and for the Chairman's dedication to these issues, particularly through the introduction of the Fish Act, along with Senator Whitehouse, who joins us today. This bill reflects the seriousness and the urgency of illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. And I look forward to working with you as we move this bill forward. I also want to thank our witnesses for being here today and sharing their expertise and for the critical work that you do each and every day to protect our oceans and our economy. Illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing is a serious and growing global threat. Not only does it harm American fishermen and coastal communities, which Delaware actually is a coastal community and has many coastal communities, but it destabilizes marine ecosystems and even has national security implications. In my home state, the mislabeling of Chesapeake blue crab undermines the livelihoods of thousands of Delawareans. It's reported in a 2015 study. In an investigation, they found that fraudulent labeling of domestic crab occurred in about 48% of mid-Atlantic crab cakes. The good news is we have experts at NOAA's National Marine Fisheries Service that collect data on this industry to enable enforcement of science-backed regulations. Unfortunately, the administration has fired about 18% of NOAA's fisheries staff and is looking to cut the budget by 30%. To make matters worse, cuts to the rest of the agency are undermining this work even further. NOAA Fisheries relies on the NOAA fleet to conduct stock assessments and surveys, a fleet that requires skilled, credentialed civilian mariners to operate. And due to the ongoing hiring freeze, 30% of NOAA's research ships will not leave the dock this summer. Fewer research ships in the water will result in fewer assessments and surveys, opening the door for illegally caught and fraudulently labeled products to flood the market, which would undercut our own domestic seafood industry and threaten consumer safety. Illegal fishing is also increasingly connected to criminal activity like forced labor, human trafficking, and organized smuggling operations. Forced labor is rampant in China's seafood industry and processing plants, where many reports detail how Uyghurs are forcibly moved and made to work in unsafe conditions to satisfy market needs. These violations underscore the need for more transparency with the seafood supply chain. Protecting American consumers and business, that is the goal. But we can't achieve that goal without the expertise, enforcement, and data from NOAA Fisheries. Now I'd like to pivot to the role of the U.S. Coast Guard and what it plays in our country. I, too, am really proud to be on this subcommittee as a ranking member and to work with our incredible Coast Guard. Their presence deters bad actors and signals to the world that the United States takes illegal fishing seriously. Unfortunately, the administration has shifted limited Coast Guard resources away from the coastal communities who need them most. And I'm especially concerned about the redirection of the Coast Guard aircraft and ships away from core mission priorities, like fisheries enforcement and search and rescue, to be used for alien expulsion flights on behalf of ICE. This is not their mission, and we should be working together to ensure the Coast Guard maintains access to the resources they need to do their jobs. Illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing is an environmental issue, an economic issue, a national security issue, and a moral issue. And it's time for us to invest in the policies, agencies, and personnel NOAA and the Coast Guard need to protect American fishermen and the consumers that rely on access to quality, ethically sourced seafood. I look forward to today's discussion and to continuing the incredible bipartisan work of this subcommittee and this committee and our work to address this global challenge. Thank you, and I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to put a fine point on a comment that was said at the very end of your testimony, Dr. Sohm-Weber, where you said this used to be a secondary issue. I was just writing down different words from jobs in the economy in our small businesses and mid-sized businesses that are impacted, our environment, as Senator Whitehouse mentioned, criminal activities, trade. I wrote down technology. I wrote down health, because we haven't really talked about the health impact of this, but when we're dealing with illegal products, we don't know what's in some of these things. So even our health status, national security. We talked about Russia and China and just the impact that they have not only on our national security, but also on their influence in other places around the world. And markets, our market power, piracy, international trade, technology. To me, this is a front and center issue. And so I want to start off with my first comment to say I'm excited to join the FISH Act. That's number one.
Hey, that's progress.
There you go. And and secondly, Dr. Sohm-Weber, I wanted to ask your opinion. We know that NOAA, National Marine Fishery Service, plays a vital role in combating IUU fishing. From your experience, can you talk about what the operational impact of a 30% budget cut to NOAA's enforcement activities? And can you describe how these cuts would affect NOAA's ability to conduct investigations into seafood fraud and mislabeling, which was another thing that we mentioned, issues that directly impact not only consumers, but domestic fisheries?
Yes, thank you for that question. A 30% cut in NOAA's budget would be devastating to these efforts on a number of fronts. First of all, among the first things to go with any budget cut, even a much smaller cut than 30%, is the kind of interagency coordination that is hard, difficult, requires time, but is sometimes seen as being outside of kind of the core day-to-day mission of good federal workers. And so they don't dedicate time to those kinds of things that are complicated but necessary to attack this kind of really difficult challenge. And so right out the window, you'd sort of lose that coordination capacity that's so fundamental to this effort. Next, you're going to lose the ability to have supporting science, to have the necessary kind of research done, to understand how these stocks are changing, to understand what critical limits may or may not be being passed, and to be thinking about how this is really impacting our fishermen here at home. And then finally, and I think as important in any of those situations, is the ability, as I mentioned, to be present, to be part of these international negotiations, to be at the regional fishery management organizations where we're negotiating with China, where we're negotiating with our competitors, where we need to be educated and speak in a way that is informed about the state of affairs in the world and about the nature of fish stocks and the health of the ocean. And with those cuts, it fundamentally damage the ability to do that.
Thank you. Mr. Prout, in addition to the travel, I would also say you have the best lapel pin of everyone as well with that beautiful crab. Mr. Prout, thank you for being here today. I appreciate you highlighting IUU fishing as a national security threat, and I share that view. I'd like to focus on a particularly urgent issue raised in your testimony, and that's the use of North Korean smuggling networks to launder Russian crab into the global seafood supply chain. From your vantage point in the commercial seafood sector, how visible or traceable is this laundering activity, and what makes it hard to detect?
Thank you, Senator Blunt-Rochester. It's incredibly hard to detect because eventually it just lands as the name of another country. So there is no commitment to actually saying where it originally comes from, as Cool would help with. So once it goes through there and goes through those channels to get modified and then placed as a different country of origin, you essentially lose the original traceability. And then, of course, that's easier imported to these other countries around the world and possibly even back into the U.S. domestic market, so that U.S. consumers are unaware of where the true source of their seafood and what they're supporting is actually coming from. So it's incredibly difficult to really truly trace that. We know what's happening, but after it takes effect, it's hard to continue to follow it.
And what are the risks to U.S. fishermen, processors, consumers, if seafood from sanction regimes continue to enter the market undetected?
Undetected, it's one of the key components of it is the downward pressure it puts on prices for true fishermen who are held to a higher standard of safety, of responsibility and sustainability for their fisheries. So really, it's the downward pressure that's putting on local fishermen. It's, when those products enter the market, it puts a tremendous amount of that downward pressure on prices for U.S. fishermen.
Mr. Chairman, I had more questions that I'll submit for the record, but could I ask one last question?
Sure. I'm going to do another round.
Oh, okay.
Or two.
Okay.
Or three.
Okay.
This is very important. I think Senator Cantwell might be on her way,
Okay.
but we'll keep asking questions.
Perfect. Mr. Proud, you also described Russian fishing vessels exhibiting behavior that suggests they may be engaged in intelligence gathering near critical infrastructure. I think this is one of the biggest issues that we talk a lot about on this committee as well, is critical infrastructure around the world and just any kind of surveillance, vulnerabilities. How concerned are you that commercial fishing vessels could be used as cover for surveillance or sabotage, particularly in the U.S. waters or near allied infrastructure?
Thank you, Senator Blunt-Rochester, for the question. It's definitely of concern because we know what's happening with the monitoring that we have in place. These Russian vessels or Chinese vessels that are labeled as foreign fishing vessels are not exhibiting behavior, maneuvering that is typically associated with fishing behavior. They're stationing at certain areas around the country, typically, as you mentioned, to gather reconnaissance and possibly even sabotage for future operations. So it's definitely a major concern that they kind of use these fishing labels or fishing operations as a covert method for their sabotage and intel gathering capabilities and goals.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Great.
I'll yield back. Mr. Chairman, I want to follow up on your point about it breaking through. And I think as a follow-up, it would be good to have some real conversation about these things because it affects all of us. And so the breakthrough is important. I think the global participation demonstrates how serious we are about it. But I really am interested as well in the market access control and what you described as partial implementation. I personally, I'm new to this subcommittee and would love to understand a little bit more about partial implementation versus full implementation and what that really looks like. And then lastly, my other concern was a comment that I think Mr. Rickard made about Americans consuming less. That is concerning. And so figuring out how we balance and give real confidence to people about the industry. And as a seafood lover, this is really important, I think, to so many of us. And so, again, some of those are follow-ups that I'd like to delve a little bit deeper on as well. But thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, for the important subcommittee opportunity, and also thank you to all of the witnesses.